And so today for Best Missouri Hands Professional Development Workshop, we have Cathy Davis of Davis Creative Publishing with us today. She and her husband and her team are the ones that helped me get my first book published. I know that a lot of our artists either have a book published or are thinking about it. Just want a little insight. And Cathy, I know you're the gal that can help us. And so if you don't mind, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll let you, and if you have a question during Cathy's presentation or whatever, if you put it in the chat, I will stop and let her know, or she'll address at the end, but she will answer any of your questions. So thank you for being with us today, Cathy. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. I have some things in there that'll kind of explain my background and where I'm coming from today, and we'll just kind of jump in here. Let's see, view full screen. And thank you for inviting me to be here today.
I'm excited.
I love talking about art. Let's see, I'm going to close that down a little bit. There we go. So if you have seen my presentation before, I will remind, or if you haven't, whoa, I'm going the wrong way. I grew up in Oklahoma, and this little blue rambler here, my grandmother, one of these, I grew up off of next to a ranch, and the ranch, had cows and cattle, and I got to go out and ride. I remember my grandmother, I had to have been 3 or 4, handing me up to the guy in the saddle, the cowboy, as I called him. And off we'd go, and I'd be helping him corral cows or whatever for the day for a couple hours while my grandmother got a break, because I would spend summers with my grandmother out in the country. And in Oklahoma, if you've ever driven through Oklahoma, you'll see these signs that say, "Do not drive through." If you're from Oklahoma, you may know that Oklahoma has a lot of tumbleweeds. And as they tumble across the prairie and tumble across the highway, they can sometimes tumble to each other and spark a fire. And if you're driving along the highway and accidentally get one of those under your car, that's not a good thing. So they teach us in driver's ed, a kind of a strategy on what to do if you see smoke on the highway or if you see a tumble. And the main thing they tell you is, stop, turn around, and get out of the way. And I liken that a lot to the current publishing industry. Quite often in our, as we're, just going through life on a daily basis, a lot of us who are wanting to publish books, we get pretty excited if someone were to say, "Oh yeah, I would love to publish your book." And what we like to do is help you remember the acronym SMOKE. Now, SMOKE actually stands for, just like if I was in that car on the highway in Oklahoma and I see smoke, first thing I need to do is slow down. Now, if it's a publisher and someone's saying, "I'd love to publish your book," of course, thank them and circle back with them later. But ideally, you want to just slow down, step. M is for move out of the way, assess the situation, talk to people that know what they're doing, observe caution when you turn around, consider your options. You want to know what your options are, ask a lot of questions, and as soon as you can get out of the way in terms of driving, you want to exit the highway. Or with a potential publisher, if it doesn't feel right, just kind of move out of the way and thank them on your journey. I've always had a fascination for books. As I mentioned, I did grow up in Oklahoma, and recently during the pandemic, I don't know if anybody else did this, but I cleaned out a lot of closets and a lot of drawers. And one of the things that I found up here in the upper left of this slide is a construction paper book that I made back in grade school. Probably, I'm going to say 4th or 5th grade, because it shows cursive writing.
Hey, Cathy.
Now,
I hate to interrupt you, but I don't think we're seeing the slides that you're,
you can't see?
No, we're seeing the Navigating the Wild West of Publishing postcard.
Oh, that's all. Well, let's try this again.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're gonna go at this a different way. Thank you for telling me. I
Yeah,
have had that happen another time.
there we
Can
go.
you see?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Techno gremlins. Anyway, the
There we
car my grandmother drove down smoky highways in Oklahoma. We'll just kind of synopsize this real quick. Remember the acronym SMOKE, because it's very much like the publishing world that we live in now. There's a lot of people out there who are going to offer to publish your book. And my message for today is this acronym of slow down, move out of the way, observe caution, know your options, and exit the highway. Get out of the way if it's not a good fit. So we can all see everything now, right? Awesome. Very cool. So the little red book in the top left corner is the book I was talking about earlier that I pulled across, that I had actually kept, that I had made in grade school. So as I looked back over my life, I've always had this connection to books. Luckily, I was one of those where my mother and my grandmother read to me a lot, and I've always had a fascination for books. In the 1980s, I moved to St. Louis. Some of you, if you're from this area, you might remember a Library Limited bookstore. It was in downtown Clayton, and then I believe they also had a store downtown for a while. I did their display and their marketing for them. And from there, I was hired, offered a job in finance. And I ran a department where we created presentation books for some of the banking clients. Fast forward to where we are now. And I need to update those figures because we were over 700 solo books and we're at about 35, 36 anthologies. An anthology is a collection of essays. And then that equates out to about 700 authors. Today's conversation, I want to make sure we cover three things. Find your voice. What is your author platform? Sometimes it's called author platform or brand platform. I just use both words, author brand platform. How can you share your story? We'll be talking about content that helps to sell you. And we'll be talking about how to make an impact. What are your publishing paths? Everything from DIY to. And again, if you have any questions, please drop those in the chat and we'll make sure we get those answered. So on a yearly basis, Amazon, and this is statistics from last year, sells over 1 million books. Over 1 million titles are uploaded each year on Amazon. And that equates out to Amazon printing approximately 750 million books. Amazon is print on demand, so a lot of the books that are on there, other than those from traditional publishers, are print on demand. Somebody orders it, the little imaginary mice take the order to the back of the room, they print the book, they put it in an envelope, and they ship it out to whoever ordered it. So the trick becomes, how do you, as a new author, potentially get a part of that $570 million in royalties that Amazon paid out in 23. There's two things we always tell our authors. One, we're not going to plan our retirement around the sale of our book. And two, it's not about how well your book sells, it's how well your book sells you. So whether you're, I'm thinking of some of the authors we just recently have published. We did one for a psychotherapist who's using that as a way to, he goes out and he speaks and he actually gives his book away. It's, top 10 tips on how to get your life back without your therapist. Or we've also done photography books. We've also done poetry books. So the trick is to find your niche and who you are. So who are you? What is it that you do? What is your message? People will buy your message before they buy your book. And what I mean about that is I liken it to no two guys are alike. So these are three guys, so to speak, that have crossed my path in my lifetime. So Guy Fieri on the far left is a chef. If you're into Cooking Network or Food Network, any of those, you'll know that he has several restaurants. He has like 5 or 6 different TV shows. and has made quite a big success for himself based on cooking and recipes. So more than likely, his book is going to have a whole lot to do with food. It may be a cookbook, or it may be, he does diners, drive-ins, and dives as one of his TV shows, and they he travels around the country. He's been in St. Louis several times. He could do a location cookbook of the different restaurants that he's been to in different cities. Family Guy, and I'll have to honestly say I've never seen this TV show, but it's like an adult comedy of some sort. But this particular type of genre would more than likely have a book that's more like a comic book, an illustrated book. And then those of us who are old enough to remember Bill Nye the Science Guy from when we were kids, the top book on the right is his original brand when he had his original TV show when I was a kid. And then the new image on the lower right is his new brand that he's moving to. Now, ironically, his target audience has not changed. He's still targeting the same people, but his audience has matured. And so therefore his brand has matured in order to keep up with that brand. So it doesn't, these are examples across a wide range of industries, just to give you an idea of how you can construct and create your own brand. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. So how do you become that guy or be the gal? If you want to get noticed, content is key. And Kim, I can't tell you how often I have used your name on these presentations and talked about what an awesome job you do in your Facebook posts.
Well, thank you.
If you're not sure where to start, I mean, I laugh so hard sometimes at your Facebook posts, and my husband will say, "What are you laughing at?" And then I'll tell him the story that you've just shared. But if you're not sure where to begin, start telling your story of what you're doing, kind of a play by play. We had a woman here in the local Webster Groves area that did a book several years ago, and she did what I call her play by play. She called it her book report. And so she would do a post on social media and say, but yet another book report. So she had this acronym BYABR. And she'd say, if you're tired of hearing about my book, just skip this post. But today I met with my editor, or today I met with my book designer, cover designer, and we got to look at 3 different covers. And even if you're not into the book yet, start talking about what it is you're doing, what it is you're creating with your art. And from there, you can take that same content and move it into your blog, move it into an e-news where you start collecting email addresses from the people that are following you, and you communicate with them perhaps on a monthly basis. We have taken people's blogs and e-newsletters and turned them into ebooks, which is another great way to start out. And it doesn't have to be a 100-page book. It could be a 10-page. Well, I'll rephrase that, because Amazon has a 20-page minimum. So you could, if for paperbacks, but you could do a small ebook on Amazon, and that showcases your art, showcases your talent. And an ebook is a very cost-effective way to step into the publishing arena. You could offer ebook for free on your website in exchange for people giving you their email address, which allows you to grow your Constant Contact or your MailChimp listings so that you can communicate with them as to where your next art show might be or where your next workshop might be. So these are all kind of interrelated ideas. And then ultimately, when you're ready, then you can move into a book arena.
Hey, Kathy,
So why do I,
can I ask a question?
certainly.
So, so there's a difference then between an ebook and an audiobook?
Yes. So in the world of publishing, you have your paperbacks, which ironically are still the biggest seller. And then you have your ebook, which is an electronic digital book that you can read on a digital device like a Nook or your iPhone or your iPad, any digital device. Amazon has done a terrific job of, it doesn't matter what digital device you have, they have what they call an e-reader that's free that you can download for that device, and you can read any of the books off of Amazon that have ebooks.
Okay.
And then you have your audiobook. Now, Amazon owns Audible, and so it is, again, it's all interrelated, but an audiobook is where either you or someone else reads your book, and there's a certain process for uploading it and getting it approved. And then people can buy that audiobook and listen to it as you're doing your daily routine or driving or wherever you want to listen to it. So there's the most popular ones tend to be the paperback, the ebook and the audiobook. And I think I might mention this later in here, but the ebook and the audiobook keep kind of playing tag, and then one will with each other in terms of which one sells the most. Right now they're kind of selling equally, but what I've learned even from the millennials, the younger readers, is that they're going back to the paperbacks, because if you have an ebook, you need to carry the device. And so the devices are heavy, whether it's your phone in your pocket or an iPad or other similar device that weighs, a pound or two, the bigger device you have, or if it's your computer. And so even the millennials have gone back to the paperback because it's lighter weight and they can, carry it in a bag and it doesn't take up as much space. But then the audios are good because, and those really sold a lot, especially during the pandemic, because we were all learning to multitask even more, working and everything from home, and people would plug in their audio phones into their things, their speaker, well, the earplug things into your head and be listening to their book as they were doing work or taking care of the kids or whatever you needed to do. Does that help, Kim?
Yes, but I also have another question because everybody on here is a working artist. And so
Uh-huh.
I know that like my book, I mean, there's a illustration on every page.
Yeah.
So if you do an ebook, do illustrations or graphics show up too, or
Yes.
is it all words?
Yes. So there is a type of ebook that we can create, and we've done a lot of these. We just had one launch yesterday, and it becomes a visual ebook. So much like you're looking at a PDF, you instead of scrolling through an ebook as a continuous scroll like the monks would have created centuries ago, you scroll through the pages one at a time. So it becomes like a photo on your digital device, but they'll get the image and the copy
Okay,
and the words, just like it looks in your book.
thank
And
you.
then, was there another part of that question?
Nope, I think that covered it.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, cool. Um, this particular slide, the whole thing about having a book is, yes, it's great for a family legacy. It's great to say I created a book, but ultimately it becomes a marketing tool for whatever else it is that you're doing. I always tell people that, especially if you're on Amazon, not to rely upon the royalties that you're going to get from Amazon, simply because Amazon likes to keep 45% of your sale, plus they're going to cost you to print the book when somebody buys it. So your take home pay from a one book sale on Amazon is maybe going to be $3 to $4. But what we do is that we teach you how to buy your books at cost from Amazon. So, and Kim, I don't remember the at cost price on yours, but what I can use as an example is, so a typical 6x9 book of about 200 pages is going to sell on your at cost price from Amazon will be around $4. You can then buy a box, say you can buy 12 or 24 or 100, how many ever you want, from Amazon, have those shipped to you. And then when you're out at your art fairs and exhibits and workshops, you can either include that book as a part of your workshop or sell that book on site. And whatever you sell it for, it's cost you $4 plus shipping. Plus, if you sell it for 20 as a signed copy, that, 15 to $16 is your pure profit.
Mhm.
My point being, you'll make more money on the books that you sell than the books that sell on Amazon. Amazon is good to help your SEO and help people find you and your name. And that brings us all the way back again, full circle to the name. Like, what's in a name? What kind of guy are you? Which guy are you? So this is an example of 6 different authors whose last name is Brown. And trust me, I've gotten used to this with the last name of Davis. I think there's 3 or 4 Cathy Davis in St. Louis, at least, that people occasionally get us confused. If your last name's Brown, these are different books. So Dan Brown, wrote the Da Vinci Code. Sandra Brown is a psychic. No, I'm sorry. Sandra Brown is a novelist, a murder mystery writer. Sylvia Brown is the psychic. Sharifa Brown is the children's author and illustrator. Brene Brown is motivation, inspiration. And Les Brown, years ago, I remember seeing him on Channel 9, and has a thriving, he teaches people to be personal life coaches and business coaches. So each of those have a very different message. So the trick is how to create, if your last name is Davis, the trick is how do you help yourself stand out so that people know that you're the specific person that they're looking for. That's how we get to content that sells you. What do you write about? And I know our audience is a very visual audience today. And I actually went to art school years ago. Not a highly recognizable school, but we had an art department. I went to K-State in Manhattan, Kansas. I started out in architecture and I ended up in graphic design. But fast forward, and what I've learned and playing with books my entire life is the books that sell right now are books that offer solution, hope, answers, relief, and expertise. As you can tell, I love acronyms.
Mhm.
And we're going to go through some of those books here. My whole idea here is to just spark some interest in you that's like, oh, I could do that, or oh, I could do that. You don't necessarily have to use a lot of words for your book to sell. And what I mean by going, especially the relief side with art, photography books and books that even how-to books. We were talking earlier about different workshops. How-to books are really big right now because people are looking for 2 things specifically when they're buying books. And this is a post-pandemic thing. People are looking for hope and community. So if you have an artistic book, people that love art are going to be drawn to you. So that not only becomes a marketing tool for you and for them to follow you and buy your art, but it also helps position you as in your field as someone who leads that arena and helps to spread the word of art. So the way these 2 work, and from a soapbox method, this is the whole hero's journey story where you're walking in life, you follow along, you trip on a bump in the road, you fall down, you pick yourself back up. Life is different now. This is the lessons I've learned, and this is why I'm in a better space. That's kind of a very short version for a hero's journey. But the soapbox is where you expand that hero's journey and become that bump in the road that you fell on a while back. You've learned this lesson. And the one on the left, Let Your Child Shine, is a book written by a PhD educator for other educators about how to spot that child in your class that you can really help shine, who may be holding back and trying to hide. The one on the far right happens to be written by a gentleman who is a modeling agent, and he helps to find jobs here in the US for models who come here from other countries. And what he noticed was that models came to the US, a lot of them came from very vastly different countries, perhaps third world countries. And they hit New York and they don't know how to find an apartment, where to find food, what happens if you get sick. Some were sleeping on the street, some were sleeping on their friends' sofas. So what he did was he created a nonprofit that helps them. He has a mentor for each of those new models coming to the US, and that mentor then helps them learn to navigate this new world that they're stepping into. Struggle Again is another hero's type of journey where the book on the left happens to be someone that accidentally, not on purpose, got hit head on a highway. She's now a speaker that goes around the country. I noticed in one of her posts recently, she's spending a lot of time in her wheelchair lately. She had been up and walking and speaking around the country, and she's kind of close to home now. But her message was facing life head on. I know I have a lot of friends that are artists, and I know one in particular who recently fell and was talking to me about how now what do I do? Because she can't go to these work and give workshops, and she's in a leg brace temporarily. But, we were talking about how, she could get on Facebook and do a Facebook Live and talk about her art and show her art that way, and make sure that she's out there in social media and sharing her communication, that no matter her message, I think, is no matter what, her art sustains her and keeps her going. These are books that have a system. So if you have a particular system that you use, perhaps in your workshops, of teaching someone an A, B, or C way to do something, or a top 10 ways to do fill in the blank, a systematic type approach to a book is a great way to get your message across, and start using it as an add-on with your workshops, almost like a take-home workbook that they can refer to, that's included in the price of your workshop. So that creates an add-on for you, but then it also gives you a little bit of extra income. The other thing, now we were talking about that location in North Carolina that many of you are familiar with. That is like a local community type where they could get together. In Missouri, I'm sure, has equal types of, and Kim or any of the artists jump in here, of communities, of artistic communities, in addition to this association, where you could gather your art together and join forces and join the budget, and everybody sharing the cost of creating something that you can produce and put out there as a marketing piece from this community you belong to. And these books happen to be just examples of, the one on the far left is about St. Louis. The one in the middle is about the high school systems here in Missouri. And the one on far right happens to be about women business owners. You could very easily do that with your artist friends. And that kind of leads us into that anthology model, where it's very similar, where 30 to 40 people may get together. We've done them for, I think we just did one recently that had 23, 24 people that had pulled together, and now they're writing their topic and writing about their particular mission and message, which was, it was called In Her Power. So it was a book about finding your motivation, your inspiration as a woman, and going out there and manifesting, the life or the job that you truly wanted to be involved with. But as artists, that's something that you could also share a common message of healing or support through art, however you might want to phrase that, and produce your book as a group. Quite often we run these types of books through bestseller campaigns, and one of them has come out at least a #1 bestseller or a #1 international bestseller. So it's kind of fun to watch the community process kick in, because the community that you pull together and create, you learn how to make this happen on Amazon, and it's a fun experience.
Hey,
So
Kath,
how do you get published? Uh-huh.
sorry. I was just gonna say that, a gal that I know that is a published author, she recently approached the Best Missouri Hands about doing a book about the organization, and featuring the artists and stuff like that. So I need to circle back around with her because I had so much on my plate. But that might be like you're saying,
Yeah, that's very similar. Yeah, when we work with a lot of nonprofits, we're working with an equine therapy group out in the Wentzville area,
Mhm.
and working on a book for them later next spring. And we're working with another group here that I think they're out in the St. Charles area. And right now I cannot think. It's a group that helps unemployed people that were downsized during the pandemic, um, and unemployed due to whatever circumstance, go out and find jobs. But yeah, you can typically, at least in our program, you can typically jump in as a solo person. You can jump into one of these group anthologies for approximately 1/10 of the cost of what it would cost you to do a book on your own. So it's a great way to tiptoe into the publishing arena, and you reap the benefits of being a solo author, but yet your budget is cut down to 1/10 of the actual cost of doing a book. And I'd be happy to, Kim, offline, I can go over some details with you. So if you want to compare notes with whoever approached you
Okay.
and answer any questions you might have about that.
That'd be
So
fantastic.
so how do you get published? Backtrack, I would say what we would normally do in that situation. So like we set up our nonprofits and our authors, just like we did Kim, as your own independent publisher. So all future royalties would then be set up to go back to the nonprofit.
Okay.
So again, I just want to remind everybody, when you're approached and somebody'd say, "Oh, we'd love to publish your book," you want to be very careful. There are a lot of people in the world today that will say, "Oh, I just got my own book up on Amazon. I figured it out. I know how to do it. Now I can help everybody else do it." There's a lot of unforeseen hiccups and unforeseen nuances with Amazon lately that, uh, like for instance, they've just added robots that will read your book when you upload it. And since April, we've had 4 books, and it's not just us, because I speak with publishers all across the US. It's happened in California with one of our close friend publishers, where Amazon will pause your book and not let you publish it because they think maybe you have said something in there that actually was originally published by somebody else, plagiarism. And we had one book, and it took us 3 weeks to convince Amazon, because first the robot recognizes it, and then it takes 2 to 3 weeks for the robot to notify one of the humans that, "Oh, you need to look at this and make sure that it really can be published." So it's a crazy game out there now with Amazon, and they have a tendency to change things and change the rules, and they don't tell you. But that just brings me back to one of my favorite acronyms of SMOKE, is when someone says, "Oh, I'd love to publish your book or help you publish your book," just slow down, thank them, circle back later, move it out of the way, go do your research, ask around, talk to people who have published. So, and I always tell people I am always available to answer questions. Text me, and I'll give my contact information later, but text me, email me. If you leave me a voicemail, it's going to take me a while to get back to you, because I don't check voicemail that often, but I do check text and I do check email on a constant basis of the day. But so just remember the acronym, SMOKE: observe, caution, know your options. And if it's not a good fit for you, you want to exit the highway. So first, we're going to talk about this chart on the far left, because it's several times here over the next 10 minutes. On the far left, we're going to start out by talking about traditional publishing. Trade publishing is just a term used for, if you go to any bookstore or an art store and you're into like romance novels, those are, published in quantities of millions of books and hundreds and tens of hundreds of thousands of billions of books. And it's kind of like the cheap way to get your book published in gazillions. But we're going to talk about traditional. And you'll notice that the speed limit in traditional is only about 20 miles an hour. It takes a while to find an agent that would represent you and to a traditional publisher who would then be welcome to publishing your book. We're going to go through the middle section and talk about all the, what I call the author be aware. This is where you're going to find a lot of smoke. And as we move further to the right, and we're going a faster speed limit of around 70, metaphorically, this is where we talk about how to be your own publisher and how to create an author as publisher team in order to help you publish your book. But first, we're going to talk about traditional. So, and this is not meant for anybody to be able to read. This is more of like a metaphorical graphic here. But some of the traditional publishing companies that you may be familiar with, like Penguin and Random House and Simon and Schuster, HarperCollins, Macmillan, those are the big guys that have been around for years. Ingram has also been around for years, and you'll hear me talk a lot about Ingram. Ingram is the distribution model for 90% of all distribution, and it's the one that we use to help distribute our independently published authors. With traditional books, and you can see the bullet points here, you'll need an agent. That means they are going to go out and do the work, but that also to find a publisher, but that also means they're going to take a percentage of your pie, of your royalties that you're going to earn. With traditional, unless you're one of those Brene Browns or Les Browns or what's her name, J.K. Rowling's, you're probably not going to get a marketing budget, and it's up to you to do the marketing. You will have lore. So say, and there's been a lot of controversy in the public media about this lately, but you're going to make it as a traditional published author, you'll make anywhere from 50 cents to $1 per book.
Wow.
Is usually what it boils down to. The image here just depicts how there are 6 to 10 major traditional publishers that own, and all these little type that we can't read here. These are examples of all the other smaller publishing companies that they own. So it's kind of like banks. You know, one huge bank will own a bunch of little banks with different names. And that's kind of the same way that the publishing industry works. There is a trend that we actually kind of bumped into that crossed our paths. So we have worked with Martha Beck. Some of you may recognize her as Oprah's life coach. Martha has had a column in the back of Oprah magazine for ever since Oprah's had her magazine. On the far left is a book that Martha produced in 2018, which was published by a traditional publisher. The purple book in the middle was a collection of essays that we were involved with in helping her pull together as she created her own publishing company. And then the book Diana herself is a book that Martha Beck wrote and illustrated and produced as her own publisher. And then on the far right is her most recent book, probably in the last 18 months to 2 years, which was traditionally published again. So what you're seeing is a combination of a bunch of different ways to publish your book that one author is doing. Now, she has a huge, hundreds of thousands of followers. So she's able to go out and do that and still maintain her relationship with her traditional publisher because they can make money off of her. One of the things that traditional publishers do is that they will hire interns to go out and monitor social media and look for authors who have a large following. And then they will, if you've got 100,000 plus people following you on a particular social media platform, those traditional publishers will, knock on your door, call you and say, hey, we'd love to help you publish a book. And that's a legitimate request. I will tell you now, because then, that's kind of the dream request that you want to look for, but you have to have that following. And again, just a reminder about how to protect yourself. We've seen some scary stories out there with people that'll go with a particular independent publisher who has said, I would love to publish your book. And I recently read a contract by a traditional publisher. They're a high pressure publisher, I'll say that in tiny, tiny mice print back on the final page of about 16 pages in this document, this contract, it said, oh, by the way, if we feel that your book is worthy of a screenplay or a screen script, we can try and sell your book to a screenwriter or to a movie producer, and you won't get any of the profits. And it was like, whoa, wait a minute. And so when that author had asked me to read that contract, and I do this for people, and I'll read the contract, and I currently still do not charge for it because I want to learn more about the industry. And I create a list of questions for that author. And I'll say, you need an attorney. You need to be talking to these people, because she had already signed the contract and was trying to figure out a way to get out of it. If you do ever find yourself in a situation where you need a publishing attorney, there is one here in St. Louis that I can refer you to that used to be out in the LA market and handles both LA and St. Louis. In the middle of our speed zone is where we enter these author be aware. You'll hear terms like indie or vanity or hybrid. And then of course there's DIY, which is do it yourself. Indie is an independent publisher, much like we saw on that chart a couple slides ago of all the little spider webs of all the smaller publishing companies that are owned by traditional publishers. They're legitimate. They give you a small, perhaps upfront fee to do your book. They will pay you to do your book. Those are the ones that you typically can trust. The vanity presses, what falls into this category is typically a printing company. And I love printers. It was my first job out of college. There are some printing companies that I'm familiar with that are calling themselves publishers now because that industry is kind of dying. But essentially what they're doing is they're trying to sell you a bunch of books. And then a hybrid is a combination of all of the above. And there's, for every hybrid printer out there's a different definition. What they'll quite often do is that they will say, yes, we'd love to publish a book. And oh, by the way, we're going to only charge you half the price. So they're charging you a small fee, but then they retain ownership of your royalties for X number of years, or until you pay off with your royalty fees to them the rest of the cost of their contract. And there's a very high profile publishing company that is doing that, which I won't name on, but if it is something that you're interested in, I would be happy to share that info in private. But you do get your book done faster by working in this middle section with legitimate publishers, and there are legitimate publishers out there. The next level we want to talk about, one other thing I do want to mention is that there are ways that you can check out. There are a lot of industry watchdogs, and I've listed some of those websites here. They actually, and then Mark Levine has a new book out on the fine art of self-publishing if you decide to go the DIY route, but he will list the buyer beware printing companies that have been turned in, as well as these other websites. They're great places to check. What I tell people to do is let's say, the name of a printing or publishing company that may have contacted you. I'm making this name up. Let's call it Silver Spoon Publishing. If they approach you and you want to check them out, just go to the internet and Google Silver Spoon Publishing complaints and use that word complaints at the end. And sometimes things will crop up that you need to know about before you choose a publisher. The other thing you want to be careful about is printers are not publishers. And I touched on this a little bit a second ago, is that printing companies make money by selling you books. They don't get involved in distribution. We had an author referred to us several years ago who had already purchased 3,000 books from a printing company in China because, yes, she did her research, and yes, it is cheaper to print your books overseas. But now she had 3,000 books in her basement. And oh, by the way, the same printing company talked her into, because her book was about a Christmas moose, they talked her into buying 3,000 stuffed moose from them. And it was a cute little stuffed moose. I bought 2 books and 2 moose from her and gave them to my grandsons when they were smaller. But she was contacting us because she said, I have all these books and moose in my basement. How do I sell them? She wasn't even on Amazon. So we were able to help at least get her set up with a website, at least talk to her about, and we got her up on Amazon. And I've not heard from her in several years, but I'm hoping that, she was able to get rid of and sell some of her her books. It was a cute little book. You don't have to buy 3,000 books. You only buy what you need. You know, we teach you how to buy at cost from Amazon and Ingram, depending on whether you're full color or black and white. And you get to go out. You're going to, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to sell more books in person. This is where I mentioned contract reviews. I talked about that before. These are just samples of some authors that got their small independent publisher went out of business and they lost the access to their art and couldn't buy books. And they had book orders. People wanted their books. And we were able to work with them and at least get them set up so that they can continue selling books. As a DIY publisher, and I liken it to baking a cake. If you know, let's say your 16-year-old daughter is having a 16th birthday and she brings you the picture of this cake and you go, and she said, this is the cake I really want at my birthday party. And you go, yeah, I can do that. And if you're a professional chef and a baker, then yeah, you can do that. You know how to do that. But if you're not, you want to be very careful because if you're used to the box cakes, you might end up with that cake on the right. And it's very similar with DIY books. If you decide to do it yourself, yes, you can do it on Amazon. You can upload your Word document. Their computers will help you lay it out. They'll help you pick the cover photo for your cover. They'll tell you where to put your name, your title, your subtitle, and they'll assign an ISBN number to it. Just remember, whoever owns your ISBN is the person that's going to get your royalties first. And then they share the royalties with you. So if you know what you're doing when it comes to books, go for it. You know, go the DIY route. It's a great way, again, to tiptoe into publishing. If not, be very careful because there are some stumbling blocks out there that they don't really tell you about them. Then there is the author as publisher, and this is where you find your own support team. And you can do this on your own. If you can do the research out on the internet, you'll find lots of people that will teach you how to do this. This happens to be the method that we use, is that we teach our authors how to be independent publishers. We set them up as independent publishers so that they can get 100% of their copyright. They keep 100% of their royalties. And they can even, you know, as they start making money and selling more books, they can put that in a trust and bequeath it to the next generation. But it's also a great way to speed up the process. With traditional and trade, you're looking anywhere from 18 months to 2 years to get an agent that will then try and sell your idea to a traditional publisher. With the author as your own publisher, you can have a book produced in 6 months, typically 4 to 6 months, if you have the components, the photos, the et cetera, that you want to put in it already ready and prepared, or maybe a year if you've got to get all that stuff together at the most. So you're moving at a faster speed and can get your book and your message out on the market. When you're an author as publisher, this just, again, kind of shows you, it's kind of like putting together a puzzle. You want to bring together the people that you need. If you need an editor, hire a professional editor. Don't use your neighbor's grandson who's a journalism student at Mizzou. They may be very good, but they also may not be familiar with books. There are times when that has worked out well, but more often than not, you want to be sure that when someone picks up your book and the first thing they look at is, you know, they're going to read that first 3 or 4 pages. And if they stumble in reading those pages and they might know editing a little better than the person that edited it, you don't want that to happen because they're going to put your book down and not buy it, and they're not going to recommend it to anybody else. So just be careful when you pull your support team together. These are just examples of books. Again, author be aware. And all in all, my goal here today has been to make sure that as you're walking along that highway of publishing and you run into smoke, that you now know how to figure out whether it's truly smoke or whether it's just something to turn around and drive away from. We want to make sure that you're not getting burned. If you ever have questions, that little QR code in the middle, just take your phone and snap a picture of it, and it'll take you to my link tree, which has all my contact information and several free downloads that you can download. And yes, that does give me your email address, but you can always opt out at any time. Once a month, on our second Thursday of the month, we have our Inspiring Author Conversations and Podcast. It's a guest involved, much like today, where we have people that are live, but we're recording at the same time. And our next speaker is going to be on Thursday, October 10th, Wanda Allen. And she's going to be talking about how to use follow-up strategies that get you more clients and close more sales. If you have other questions, please reach out to me. If you have, my email is there on the lower right. If you have a contract that you've been presented and not signed and would like for me to read it, I'd be more than happy to. Even if you signed it, I'd be more than happy to give you a list of questions of what you need to respond back to before you sign it. And Kim, do we have any other questions?
Well, I want to just let everybody know here, Cathy, like I said, Cathy and her team are who helped me to publish my book. I was at an art show in Wildwood, and a gal came in my booth, and we got to talking because my plan was to eventually publish a book about my heritage breed photo project I've been working on. And this gal said, I work with a publisher. Let me introduce you. So that's how I first met Cathy. We met at a little restaurant somewhere in St. Louis, and she brought me samples and we had a nice chat. And I will tell you what, if you guys are thinking about doing a book, I 100% recommend Cathy and her crew, because not only is she a real life person that you can talk to face, she's there for you and walked me through all these steps. I had absolutely no idea at all of what I was doing with doing dandelion. I figured I'd start with dandelion. It was a little story that true life story that I had put together on Facebook. Like she said, I post my stories and my pictures and stuff. So I just compiled all of those to make a book. And I would say, like Cathy said, how they've got me set up and stuff, I can purchase however many books I want online through is it KDP, Cathy?
Yes.
Okay.
Amazon KDP. Uh-huh.
Okay. So like at first I purchased like 25 books because it's like, like she said, I didn't want to be stuck with 3,000 books sitting in my spare bedroom. And it just grew. So I mean, now in less than a year, without really doing anything other than just word of mouth, I've sold almost 1,000 copies. And so I'm ready now. And like Cathy said, I've got them on my website. I take them to the shows. I just did the farmers market this past weekend. So selling them myself has been much more lucrative, and I'm selling a lot more than on Amazon. I'm having some Amazon sales, but I probably haven't even sold 50 books yet on Amazon, but that's also my fault. I haven't put the effort there yet, but that's where my mind's shifting now. I'm going to start working on kind of stuff like that. But if you guys are thinking about doing a book, having that connection with Cathy, being able to see her in person and doing online. And like she said, she has a monthly lunch and learn. It's half an hour long. I attend all of those because you never know what kind of tips you're going to pick up. So if you guys have any questions for her, uh, throw them out now.
Well, I'm more than happy to, schedule a phone call and we can brainstorm, even if you're just not sure, there's no commitment, that's the one thing is that we're low sell. My goal is to help you grow your business. And if we can help you do that, that's awesome. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about what the possibilities are. And I think collecting as a collective, as a group, you may want to really investigate that anthology model. And I'd be at some point, whenever you guys are ready, be happy to answer those questions also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So does
Yeah.
anybody here want to unmute themselves and ask Cathy a question while we've got her here? Jamie?
Yeah, I have a question, and it's maybe a little off topic, but one of the things I've struggled with is how to craft content that attracts people who want to, say, buy my art rather than learn how to make the art. And
So I was just going to ask you, what moves you to make your art? And why is
well,
it so, yeah.
yeah, so I mean, it started off as process and learning and loving to learn how to do something, but that's not helping me sell it.
Well, and what I would offer is to have a brainstorm session with you to help you get that narrowed down to learn what your true message is. Because
Yeah.
and that's the part that you want to start thinking about, because that's where people get excited, because they go, oh, I have that same idea, or I feel that same way about art, or art makes me feel that same way. That'll start becoming your followers, and
Mhm.
of the people that have currently purchased your art up until this point, what has been their motivation? That's a question also to think about. And what has inspired them to buy your art? And as
Yeah.
you narrow it down to your message, then you start using that message in your social media. Like Kim has done, first it started out as the heritage breed conversation, and then her photography got added into that. And so it's not only about saving these heritage breeds, but it's also about making it fun. Is part of the message I get from Kim, is that life can be fun. Not all stories are happy, but we can perhaps find the happiness in it, and we can change our mind for that day, and or think about what it is we're doing and who we're working with and the animals that we play with, is Kim, and make up stories. For this is part of her brand, and being able to make up those stories that make the rest of us smile. And
Mhm.
that's what, and I just got goosebumps, so I know that's got to be part of it. But that's why I love Kim's stories, is because they're always going to make me smile. And then her art for me is the kind of the icing on the cupcake, so to speak, is that, I mean, I just love how she changed her photos and into making them appropriate for the book, and that it stylized it for her. But you'll find your own niche that way too. It's what makes your heart sing and what makes your buyer's heart sing. That's the part that we would help you cultivate and think about and start using as your brand.
Okay.
And I'm more than happy to set up a call, and we can
Yeah.
brainstorm on that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Holly, did you have a question? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just realized that. Yes, my husband and I became grandparents a little bit over a year ago, and my husband's a marketing guy. I know, yes, it's very exciting. We have so much fun with him. My husband's a marketing guy and is going to be retiring. And one of the things we've talked about is doing a line of children's books. Now I'm a fiber artist, and I'm not one to, excuse me, to be able to do the illustrations for the children's books. That's not my forte. Can you help us find illustrators appropriate?
Yes, so I can give you an example of, we have connections, and I like to use local illustrators when possible.
Yeah.
We have and we like to use illustrators that allow you to keep the copyright to your book. And we can, there are some illustrators that will only license you that piece of art for that book at that time. So if you wanted to later on, even if you wanted to make a poster for a table where you had your books, you'd have to go back and get permission. We try and work with authors that allow you to retain the use of that art however long, or for whatever you want it for, because you have paid them a fee for that. And we try and stick with local authors. Now, I can give you a good example of another husband and wife that I know that are exactly what you talked about. And what she did was she tapped into a university art department, and is using college students who need portfolio pieces. And if you don't mind, I was going to turn because I have a children's section. I was going to show you a sample of one of the books. It's beautifully illustrated that a college student did for her. And if you need some, I have some of the universities and we could talk about that, but that's a less expensive way also to go, because you can look at anywhere from a couple hundred per illustration to a couple thousand, depending on what you want and what you need and the style that you're looking for.
Per illustration per page?
Yes. And so that's why, yeah, you want to be, and the more, a good example is when I was in the corporate world, I had an intern, a WashU art student. He is now, and back then, I mean, he's a beautiful illustrator. He's now a professor at WashU in the art department. He does drawings for Pixar on the side. He's like 5,000 to 10,000 per illustration.
Wow.
And he will only license it to you for that book. So if you wanted to do a t-shirt or a mug, you got to go back and pay him some more money. I mean, that's the upper echelon. What we try and do is introduce you to people that, so like we have a lot of retired illustrators that maybe had full-time jobs and now they're illustrators and they want to do books. And so we try and pair you with that. Now you want to be careful in that I would highly suggest that you pay them a fee rather than sharing royalties, because it can get a little complicated
Yeah.
if you decide to share royalties and pay them back that way. It's a lot of math. I don't like math.
Yeah, well, it's more bookkeeping, you know.
It is, exactly.
Bookkeeping is to pay the fee up front. I totally
Yeah.
get it. And so one of the thoughts is we would have this series of books with the same character going through the books.
And that would be helpful, because then you're going to pay a little bit more up front to work out that character. And
Right.
then just reuse
the character in
it in a different format.
poses.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That would be
cool.
helpful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And I have one thought too, Polly. You might even check within the Best Missouri Hands group, because I know like Catherine Mahoney, she's a painter down in Herman. She has done the illustrations for I think 4 books now, for a local author down there and stuff. And I know that there's at least a couple more people within our group that you know, do illustrations and stuff. So, but Cathy can hook you up with people, you know, that's what they do for a living. You know, they have their set fees and all that. So if you're working with somebody in our group, now Catherine probably does have set fees and everything else. Someone else, you might have to really do all the math, negotiating with them and figuring out because originally Dandelion, I had an artist that was going to do the illustrations, and the math didn't work out. You know, she wanted royalties, plus she wanted a flat fee and wanted to be able to sell, you know, it got too, and plus I'm a photographer, you know, and she was going to do the paintings from my photos, and it just didn't make sense. It was just like, I'm a photographer. Like Cathy said, I was able to digitize the images to where they look like illustrations, and it worked out great and everything. But yeah, I definitely would, you know, touch back with Cathy, and, you know, she can help you out on that. So
When you just said you can digitize a photograph to look like an illustration, so is another route that we could do is to have pictures of our grandson digitized to look like an illustration?
Yeah.
uh,
You can, I don't remember, Kim, what program you used. I know we can do it in Photoshop.
you might not be able to see how digitized that is. That
Okay.
it's like the photo, but there's several different programs out there where you can convert a photo into, you know, you can make it look like it's art impression. I mean, you know,
I think
Gothic.
the cover, I think your cover really shows the digitized version. Yeah.
So can you do it digitized to the point where it almost looks like a cartoon?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at
Okay.
eFunky is the program
Be
that
funky?
eFunky is the program I use, But like I said, there's tons of different programs out there. That's the one that worked for me. You know, I mean,
Okay.
for what I was trying to create and do. And so, and they've got
And
some,
then, and we had conversations about how to save the art so that it would print.
Yeah.
And how, how to, what size it needed to be, because
Right.
there's
I can still see needing to use you, Kathy, whatever route I go. This is like, I've been going, how do you do this?
Yeah,
And I'd much rather pay something to make a faster start.
Mhm.
yeah,
than
and we can
increase
answer all those questions for you, but yeah, it's, once you've done it once, then it all kind of makes sense, but it's putting
Exactly.
together that first puzzle
Mhm.
that you're going, what am I supposed to be doing next? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
Uh-huh.
That was very, very helpful. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Steve.
And
you got
Steve, you
questions?
look familiar. Are you on mute?
Yep.
I think you're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Hey, I wanted to say this has been a really super interesting and informative
Mhm.
session.
Thank you.
Linda and I have, we went one route where Linda published a cookbook, and we have a few hundred of them sitting in our dining room.
Mhm.
Well, in a spare room, not the dining
Yeah.
room. But anyway, just the information we gathered from that, because she's been thinking about a second book, and I've had some thoughts about wood carving books also. But I just wanted to say it's been really informative, and Kathy, I'm sure that my wife will be getting a hold of you and talking about publishing a second book and get some
More than
ideas.
happy, and I may have a solution for the couple hundred cookbooks on a way you can, there are ways you can still get those on Amazon, but I'd be happy to have that conversation with you.
That sounds good. She's giving you a thumbs
I
up.
see the thumb. Yeah, I give it back. Yeah. Yeah.
So just wanted to say I've really enjoyed the session.
I appreciate the input. Thank you.
Good deal.
Yeah.
How about you, Jeff? You've hung in there. You got some questions?
Yeah, well, or kind of, yeah, I'm, because of what I do, I'm a wood turner, I'm an artist, but I teach a lot. I teach in-person classes, I teach virtual classes, and I've had lots of people ask me, well, is there a, well, I've got one professionally made instructional DVD, which surprisingly still sells. But I've been seriously considering writing potentially a series of instructional books, and I've approached some of the um, some of the big publishing companies that have published the books that are over here in my shelf from other artists over the years. And like Schaefer's a big one, that they publish a lot of these instructional books, and they have politely but firmly shut me down, simply by saying, well, we have that content. It's like, yeah, but it was published in the end of the 90s or the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Everything has changed. While the techniques are sound, the tooling, the machinery, the applications are different, and the books that I own are kind of dry, and I think that I could do something a little bit better. You do much with purely instructional
We
material?
have, we do a lot of, sometimes we'll do a workbook as a companion to another book. And so we do a lot of workbooks. For an instructional book, you'll need photographs.
Right.
Yeah. And you may already have those, but I would, definitely start getting those photographs, or, in a class, hey, hand someone your phone and say, hey, take a picture of me doing this, and start building that up so that you've got it to fall back on when you're ready to put it together.
A lot of my social content is me doing a series of photographs and whatnot. But the cool thing is, I'm currently in college going after an art degree, and I think I officially decided yesterday morning during a Zoom conference with a advisor. I think I'm actually going to change my art major to photography because I'm doing some things and really want to rely on my own photos as opposed to relying on somebody else.
Yeah.
Just, my vision. My vision is my vision, and the only way that I can, translate my vision to somebody else is to present what my vision actually is. And it's fun too. So I think the photo part I have down, the organization of the project. Yeah, I'm not good at organizations.
And quite
Content I
often,
got, putting it together is a little challenging.
yeah, quite often that's where we come in. It's we literally on that book by Charlie Brennan, he literally handed us an envelope that had napkins with notes written on it, or backs of old bills that
That's my system. Backs
Yeah.
of envelopes. Yeah.
it was just like it was like, here, help me organize this. It's like, okay, so you hear that from CPAs. I never imagined we would do it, but yeah, it's all good. We have organizers, and that's part of what they do. But I know I've thoroughly enjoyed being here today. My whole goal over the year, I've been trying to create a corner in my own basement where I've been putting all my art supplies as I run across them again and dig them out of boxes and things, so that I can set up my own little studio down there. Not sure what I'm going to create yet. That's still, I have so many things I want to do and want to try, but I thank you for inspiring me to keep doing that and keep trying to get that space cleaned out. So I've got a spot. So I
Wow.
appreciate you inviting me to be here with you today.
Absolutely. We thoroughly enjoyed you, Kathy. It's very informative, and I hope that everybody on here will follow up with you, because it sounds like everybody here has ideas for books. And I like I said, I 100% endorse Kathy and her crew, and being able to help you, navigate your way through the wild, wild west of publishing. So,
Yeah.
this
Thank
has
you.
been recorded, so it will go up on the YouTube channel if you want to watch it again. Kathy, we will have all her information. I'll post it on the member page again, and it'll be with the YouTube video, so you'll be able to contact her and everything. But Kathy, your website, they can reach you through it too, and email you.
It's Davis. Every page has a way to connect with me. It's daviscreativepublishing.com.
Okay.
And each page has a calendar where you can schedule a call. There's also a contact page where you can, it'll also connect you to my calendar.
Fantastic.
And that if you did not get the QR code, and it's Cathy with a C at daviscreativepublishing.com.
Okay.
Feel free to reach out anytime, guys.
All right. Any follow-up questions, or is everybody good and ready to get some information together and contact Kathy?
Yeah.
All good?
Yeah.
All right.
Enjoyed
Kathy,
meeting everyone.
yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest
Thank
of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mhm.